So why don't you tell us a little bit about how the pandemic impacted Butler Design Group?
Well, I think the entire market was impacted obviously by that, but for Butler Design Group, we were already in a situation where we could go pretty mobile. So as the pandemic came along, and we were able to go remote pretty quickly, and frankly, we had one of our better years in 2020. Just was a lot going on in the industrial sector, and our sectors are spread across. We don't specialize in one specific sector, but 3 or 4. And so getting used to working remotely was probably the most difficult part, because we're very much a culture firm, and have a lot of interaction. So getting up to speed on Zoom and that interaction was probably the biggest growing pain of that. But fortunately, we had a lot of dedicated staff and professionals, and we all were able to go remote pretty quick. So for us, it affected us like a lot of other people, but I think from a standpoint of the market sector and what we were able to do, we were able to stay quite busy during the pandemic.
You are known for your culture. How were you able to manage that culture and maintain it while you had the staff kind of spread across the valley?
You look at the pandemic from a standpoint of culturally across the board was difficult for people. You're going to where you're very interactive to this point where you're trying to remain interactive, but you're doing so remotely. There's no personability to it. I think one of the things we really tried to do is take advantage of Zoom and Teams and programs where we could do video conferencing, have video happy hours. We'd have video happy hours, video meetings for the entire firm where we'd all get together on that, and just try to continue to have that personability interaction. And then we also promoted that with our teams, from a standpoint of just making sure our managers were interacting with the staff and making sure that everybody was staying connected, even though it was a little bit harder to do so. Like I said, programs like Teams and Zoom came in really handy. I think if those 2 programs weren't out there, it might have, we end up with FaceTime or something like that. But it was difficult. It's made it even difficult kind of coming back, getting people back into the gear of that culture that we embrace so much. We call ourselves the BDG family, and it's because we feel like we're looking after each other. You spend as much waking time with your coworkers as you do maybe your family during the week, and so there's a definite intent that you have to be in regard to staying connected.
Are there any lessons that you're going to take away from the pandemic that you think will make Butler Design Group a stronger company, or are you an even stronger leader than you are?
When you think about the lessons, we learned that we're more agile than maybe we even thought we were. Butler Design Group in particular, we consider ourselves a fairly nimble and agile company from the standpoint of how we respond to our clients, to our contractors, to the cities. But realizing that we could adapt as well as we did to the pandemic and working from home, it let us grow in that responsibility matrix that you're kind of creating for your staff and people. And you learned about being dependable and depending on others to get the job done, even when you're not connected at every moment. You're not able to turn around and talk to the person at the desk next to you, but you're able to connect with them in a different way. So we just found that we were able to modify how we approach things, and in some ways we're, I guess, technically a little bit more efficient. In fact, coming back out of the pandemic, which we hope to be coming out of, but as we do that, you're looking at your work week. How do you structure getting back to the office versus working remotely? How does that impact each individual? And I think that that's something we had really focused on pre-pandemic, is about focusing on the individual. Not everybody fits into the same mold. I think post-pandemic, we're looking at how does that impact, like right now our office is we ask our employees to be in the office 3 days a week, and they can work remotely 2 days a week if they'd like. Will that stand the test of time? Is the new office different than that? Or are we gonna see to where there's a lot more remote capabilities? I think yes, to an extent. I think offices all around are gonna see just a big change in that. Pre-pandemic, we were talking about large parking fields and things that we were trying to accomplish. And I think post-pandemic, you're going to have more space per person, and you're going to have fewer people working at the office 5 days a week.
It seems like every single day we're getting a new big project announced, groundbreaking on different corners every single day. How crazy is it out there right now? Have you ever seen the market like it is right now?
I really can't say we have, especially on the industrial side. I mean, the industrial market is just off the charts. We're a firm we always kind of represented ourselves a third in the office market, a third in the retail market, and a third in the industrial market, and then the subsectors kind of fit in there. And I think, that fluctuates from year to year, always has. I mean, obviously in the recession, retail was gone as well back then, and different things were coming up, and we were doing very different projects. But we've seen that as the market transitioned it was transitioning a little bit pre-pandemic. We were seeing less retail, the Amazon factor, that you were seeing in the retail. Industrial was becoming the new retail because it was all about shipping, and we were seeing that a little bit pre-pandemic. And I think in a lot of ways the pandemic just put a magnifying glass on a lot of different aspects of our culture. The things we've already talked about, but also industrial just really bumped up. And even as recent as the last couple of months, 70, 75, maybe even 80% of our portfolio for this last year has been industrial. Whether it's been build to suit or just spec industrial, the absorption's high on it. But we're also starting to see a comeback of the office, a comeback of the retail. We just had a company meeting this afternoon where a lot of the projects we were presenting to staff so that they all kind of see what we're working on, we're actually retail projects. So that's good news to kind of see it kind of starting to balance back out a little bit. And it allows us to diversify, again, the architecture and the experience that we give our employees from a diversity standpoint.
Why do you think Arizona has become such a hot spot for industrial?
Well, I mean, you could go all kinds of different routes with that. I mean, obviously there's the political route, and that, we have a business-friendly environment, and as long as we maintain that, we hope to continue to attract great businesses. I think even though we'll all say, and we're all struggling to find staff, we do have a lot of high-tech capabilities in the state from a standpoint of whether it's our universities, great university programs all the way around, even our community college programs are pretty good. So I think there's a lot of talent to attract to, and you just see neighboring states where they're just kind of become almost anti-employment in some ways, and when you see that, we're just seeing an influx of that, and I think it's changing the dynamic here in Arizona from a standpoint of just whether you're talking red, blue, purple state, but I think it also kind of just changes it in the mentality, and I think that we're seeing just a lot of different tech, even in the industrial. It's not the old industrial buildings of old where it's just racking and everybody's driving a forklift. I mean, the guys that are coming in, they're getting paid well, and it's a lot of technology that's going into those buildings, and so the guys that are coming in aren't operating the forklifts, they're working on the laser-guided forklifts, they're doing the electronic programming. So, a warehouse today isn't all about manual labor, it's a lot about that technology and the mental labor it is to keep it operating. So I think there's just a lot of things in Arizona. I mean, obviously we got great weather, and sure it's hot in the summer, but we don't have the natural disasters that some of the other states do. And I think also when you come to Arizona, there's not many states that have the diversity of not just demographics, but the diversity of places that you can go. You can, a couple hours travel, you're in the snow in the winter, a couple hours travel, maybe slightly out of the state, you're going to end up on a beach, so there's just a lot of opportunity in Arizona to kind of experience all the different seasons and all the different geographic components that many states are kind of stuck with one, and that's their sales pitch. For us, it's very diverse.
Are there trends that we should be watching in architecture going into 2022 and beyond?
In architecture, I think, we're going to see trends that are related to the personally, I think we're going to see trends related to in the office environment. For a long time, you think about the offices of old, they were enclosed offices, they may have been fairly large, 10 by 12 offices, and then they kind of shrank down, and then we went to open office, and then that open office space shrank, and the next thing you know, you're doing call centers and cubes that are 6 by 6 or 4 by 6. Mm-hmm. I think the pandemic brought that back out. People want a little bit more space, so I think we're going to start to see offices not be as dense as they were. And then we're also going to see the enclosed office return a little bit, I believe, for the managers and different aspects there. We see a lot of them wanting more meeting spaces that are cordoned off and less of the open office component. But I think that there will just be a blend of that as we continue to go on the office side. On the industrial side, technology is going to rule. I really do think. I mean, we're seeing taller buildings. 40-foot clear wasn't a commonplace 4 or 5 years ago. It's pretty much the standard now to start at 40-foot clear in a large industrial building. But we're seeing with the industrial build-to-suits, we're seeing even with the spec industrial, just a drive to excel on the technology side as well as on the sustainable side.
So commercial real estate construction is red hot right now. What's your outlook going into 2022 and beyond? Is there a runway that we see?
When I talk to the industry partners and we look at our projections, right now we don't see an end in the near future. I don't know how far that is. I mean, you read some articles and they talk 3-5 years or whatever, and that there'll be a big downturn. I don't know, for Phoenix in particular, I just don't know how that'd be felt even if we saw one nationwide, just because we do have a hot market and there's a lot of absorption going on as well as a lot of building going on. If anything, right now, the difficulty going forward is finding work, finding workers and finding skilled labor, not just as architects, but as contractors and subcontractors. They're struggling to find the skilled labor. We've had this last year really, in some ways, as a result of the pandemic, we've had this shortage of materials or difficulty of getting hold of materials because the pandemic shut down manufacturing and of construction materials, that by the time it kind of caught up and everything was starting to go vertical again, you really kind of came up with this shortage on materials. So it'll be interesting to see how staffing and materials transition as we get into the future. You are going to start seeing more automation, I think, because you don't have the people that want to work at a decent skilled job. It's unfortunate. I think that there's a lot of drive to either not work or to go to college and try to get a degree in something that nobody really wants you to work in anyways, when you can make really good money being a very skilled plumber or mason or architect or drafter or engineer. And I think people just tend to overlook that field at the moment. And I don't know if it's the schools really pushing it or society or exactly what that is, but I'd hope to see that kind of start to level back off. I mean, there is some light at the end of the tunnel, I think, for a lot of people going, hey, we don't know where we're going to find labor, and we're struggling with it ourselves. Attract and retain is one of the most difficult things you have right now.
Okay, last question. For a long time, it seemed like the West Valley was the hot spot for industrial. The East Valley was kind of the hot spot for office and technology. But we seem to be kind of spreading the wealth now. Is that what you're seeing in the marketplace, and what can we expect? Are there hot spots in the valley that we should be looking for in 2022 or no?
I think we're seeing as you say, spreading the wealth a bit more. We're seeing some industrial come up in the East Valley out by the Mesa Gateway area. So we're seeing that pop up. You still have a lot of West Valley industrial. I think you're going to see, one of the things you got to think about is that West Valley industrial is bringing a lot of employees to it. And so you got the housing market that's booming out there as well. I used to live in the West Valley. One of the things that's a glut in the West Valley is you don't have a lot of great restaurants. So you're going to see, that follow. You're going to see that start to come through where they need that entertainment and restaurant venue and everything to support everything that's going on out there. But then now we're seeing, You know, like I said, out at Eastmark and the areas out there in the East Valley, we're seeing the industrial, the retail kick back up. You're going to see an office market. So the three support another when it comes to the commercial side of things. And then you, on top of that, markets that we don't operate in, but you know, your hospitality market, et cetera. You know, we're seeing North Scottsdale with some great office market things going on. So North Valley, you know, we operate all throughout the valley, and we're seeing activity in nearly every municipality that we operate in. We get invited a lot to operate even outside the valley, down into Tucson, Oro Valley, and up into Flagstaff, as well as outside the state. So there's just a lot of activity to be spread around, and I think that, you know, as long as we can all stay on focus and keep moving with that. Right now, the challenge is not only for us for staff, the municipalities are struggling to get staff in and be able to get review times and through processes that are conducive to what the demands are coming in of those companies that want to get settled and get going, because, you know, days are dollars for them. So